She laughed in his face in front of a crowded gym, calling the quiet single father an easy target. She wanted to use him as a punching bag to show off her new black belt. Have you ever watched someone dig their own grave without realizing who they are standing over? The afternoon sun beat down on the pavement of La Jolla, California, casting long shadows across the glass facade of elite Apex martial arts. Inside, the air conditioning hummed, mixing with the sharp scent of sanitized mats and the rhythmic thud of bare feet. Andre Dupre stood near the entrance, holding the small hand of his 7-year-old daughter, Aaliyah. He wore a faded grey t-shirt, work-worn denim, and a pair of steel-toe boots that had seen years of hard labor. His hands were calloused, his posture relaxed but inherently grounded. Beside him, Aaliyah practically vibrated with excitement, her eyes wide as she took in the gleaming heavy bags and the expansive blue mats. She had been begging for months to learn martial arts, and Andre, having saved enough from his contracting jobs, had brought her to the best academy in San Diego. What the people in this upscale gym did not know was that Andre was not just a blue-collar worker trying to scrape by. He was a Navy SEAL, currently on extended leave to transition to reserve status so he could spend more time raising his daughter alone. He had survived deployments in the most hostile environments on Earth, operating in shadows, mastering the art of controlled violence and absolute discipline. But here, today, he just wanted to be Aaliyah's dad. He wanted her to find confidence, to learn self-defense in a safe, structured environment. In the center of the main mat stood Meredith Pierce. She was the head instructor of the youth program and a newly minted black belt. She was tall, athletic, and entirely absorbed in her own reflection in the mirrored walls. Meredith treated the gym as her personal kingdom. She thrived on the attention of the affluent parents who paid exorbitant fees to have their children train under her. Today, she was hosting an open house, a public sparring demonstration meant to showcase her skills and draw in new wealthy clientele. Andre approached the front desk, his voice a low, polite rumble as he asked for an enrollment form for Aaliyah. The teenager at the desk handed it over, but before Andre could fill it out, a sharp voice cut across the room. "Excuse me, are you lost?" Meredith had stepped off the mat, her black belt tied immaculately around her crisp white gi. She looked Andre up and down, her lips curling into a visible sneer. She took in his worn boots, the dust on his jeans, the cheap digital watch on his wrist. In a neighborhood where parents arrived in luxury SUVs wearing designer athleisure, Andre stood out like a sore thumb. "We are here for the open house," Andre said mildly, his face a mask of calm. "My daughter Aaliyah is interested in joining the beginner classes," Meredith scoffed, crossing her arms. "This is elite Apex. We require a serious financial and time commitment. We do not do daycare for people who just want to drop their kids off while they work a shift. Are you sure you can even afford the uniform?" Aaliyah shrank back, hiding behind her father's leg. Andre felt a familiar, cold stillness settle over him. In a war zone, panic and anger were liabilities. He had been trained by the United States military to maintain a sub-zero heart rate under heavy fire. A petty insult from an arrogant civilian was not going to break his composure. He placed a gentle, reassuring hand on Aaliyah's shoulder. "We are fully prepared for the commitment," Andre replied evenly. "I would just like her to watch the demonstration first, to see if she likes it." Meredith saw his calm demeanor as a challenge. She was used to intimidating people, to being the alpha in the room. The fact that this working-class nobody was not bowing down to her authority irritated her deeply. She glanced at the crowd of parents and students who had gathered to watch the exchange. A cruel idea formed in her mind, a way to put this man in his place and boost her own ego. "Tell you what," Meredith said, projecting her voice so the entire gym could hear. "We have a tradition for the open house, a friendly exhibition match, easy money for the academy. Usually I charge a $50 entry fee for anyone brave enough to step on the mat with me. But I will make you a special deal. You step on the mat with me for 3 minutes. If you can last without quitting or getting knocked down, I will give your daughter a full-year scholarship, free tuition, free uniform. But if you lose, you take your kid and you leave, because you do not belong here." The crowd murmured. Some parents chuckled, entirely on Meredith's side, eager to see the arrogant instructor put on a show. Others looked uncomfortable, but said nothing, unwilling to challenge the star instructor of the academy. Andre looked down at Aaliyah. Her lower lip was trembling. She whispered softly, "Daddy, no. We can go home. I do not want to do this anymore." Andre knelt down, looking directly into his daughter's eyes. He smiled, a genuine, warm expression that erased the hardness of his features. "It is okay, baby girl. Just a little game. You stand right here by the desk, okay? I will be right back." He stood up and looked at Meredith. "I do not want to fight you. I just want to enroll my daughter." "What is the matter?" Meredith mocked, stepping closer, smelling of expensive perfume and sweat. "Scared to get shown up by a woman in front of your kid? Or maybe you just know you do not have what it takes to survive in a real gym. Come on, easy money, unless you are a coward." Andre did not sigh. He did not flex his muscles. He simply nodded, unlacing his heavy steel-toe boots and setting them neatly aside against the wall. He emptied his pockets, placing his keys and wallet next to his boots. He stepped onto the blue mat barefoot, still wearing his jeans and t-shirt. He made no aggressive movements. He just stood there, breathing evenly, his hands resting loosely at his sides. Meredith smirked, bowing formally. Andre gave a slight nod in return. The crowd edged closer, cell phones coming out to record what promised to be a humiliating spectacle for the quiet father. A buzzer on the wall sounded loudly, marking the start of the 3-minute round. Meredith wasted no time. She wanted this over quickly, aiming for a highlight reel knockout to prove her absolute dominance to the parents. She closed the distance with a rapid flurry of strikes, a textbook combination of quick jabs and a high roundhouse kick aimed directly at Andre's head. To the untrained eye of the parents, it looked as though Andre had merely stumbled backward in fear. But a trained professional would have noticed the sheer economy of his movement. He did not block the kick. He simply shifted his weight a fraction of an inch backwards. The heel of Meredith's foot cut through empty air, brushing harmlessly against the fabric of his shirt. Meredith lost her balance slightly from the missed momentum, her eyes widening in momentary surprise. She quickly recovered, masking her shock with a loud shout, throwing a heavy cross followed by a spinning back kick. Again, Andre was a ghost. He slipped the punch with a minimal tilt of his head and stepped off the center line as the kick sailed past him. He was not adopting a traditional fighting stance. He was not raising his hands to guard his face. He was simply walking in the center of the ring, his eyes tracking her hips and shoulders, reading her physical telegraphs before she even fired her muscles. "Stop running away," Meredith barked, her face flushing with anger and exertion. "Fight back." "I am not here to fight you," Andre said, his voice entirely steady, not a single hint of breathlessness in his tone. "I am just passing the time." The crowd's laughter which had started out as mocking toward Andre, began to shift into a confused silence. The parents were watching a highly decorated black belt throw everything she had at a man in jeans, and she could not even graze his chin. The sheer frustration radiating from Meredith was palpable in the room. She charged him again, this time abandoning the clean, technical strikes of her art for a more aggressive, brawling approach. She threw a barrage of wide hooks, trying to corner him against the edge of the mat. Andre moved smoothly, pivoting on the ball of his foot, letting her aggression carry her past him. He used no strength, only geometry and angles. When she tried to grapple him, grabbing his t-shirt to execute a heavy judo throw, he subtly shifted his hips, breaking her grip instantly and leaving her stumbling forward onto the mat. She caught herself on her hands, her face burning hot with intense humiliation. She could hear the confused whispers of her students behind her. She, the untouchable black belt of elite Apex, was being made to look like a fool by a construction worker who refused to even throw a single punch. Meredith pushed herself off the mat, her ego completely fractured. Her rigorous training went out the window, replaced by a blind, malicious rage. The wall clock showed 1 minute left. If she could not beat him technically, she decided she would hurt him intentionally. She lunged forward, feinting a high punch to draw his attention before dropping low and driving her heel aggressively toward his knee joint. It was a dirty, illegal strike in any friendly sparring match, designed to hyperextend the joint and tear ligaments. It was a career-ending strike, a vicious attempt to physically break a man just to preserve her own vanity. Aliyah gasped from the sidelines, covering her eyes with her small hands, but Andre saw the strike coming a mile away. The environment slowed down for him. This was the exact same hyper-focus that had kept his team alive during nighttime raids in Fallujah and Helmand Province. He did not strike back, adhering to his own strict code of engagement and remembering his daughter was watching. Instead, he simply lifted his lead leg, turning his shin outward just enough to check the incoming kick. Bone met bone with a dull, sickening thud. Meredith shrieked, dropping to the mat instantly and clutching her own foot. Because of the perfect angle and the iron density of Andre's heavily conditioned shins, her forceful kick had acted like a hammer striking an anvil. The pain was immediate and blinding. She writhed on the blue foam, tears of pain and fury streaming down her flushed face. Andre lowered his foot, his expression completely unchanged. He looked at the timer on the wall. 10 seconds left. He stood silently over her, completely unharmed, offering no taunts, no words of victory. He just waited for the buzzer to ring. When the loud beep finally echoed through the gym, the room was locked in a stunned, suffocating silence. Nobody moved. The teenagers holding their phones had lowered them, their mouths hanging open. The wealthy parents stared at the man in the faded t-shirt, as if he had just performed magic. Andre turned away from the groaning instructor. He walked calmly to the edge of the mat, stepping off and sliding his feet back into his steel toe boots. He bent down to pick up his keys and wallet. Aliyah rushed over to him, wrapping her arms tightly around his waist. "You did not get hurt, Daddy?" "No, baby," Andre said, gently stroking her hair. "I told you. Just a game." On the mat, Meredith was being helped up by a young assistant instructor. She was limping heavily, her face twisted in a mixture of agony and deep-seated rage. She glared at Andre, pointing a shaking finger at him from across the room. "You cheated!" she screamed, her voice cracking loudly. "You planted something in your jeans. You are a fraud. Get out of my gym. You are trespassing." Andre stood up fully, holding Aliyah's hand. He looked at Meredith with eyes that were cold, ancient, and utterly unfazed by her tantrum. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. You offered a challenge. I lasted 3 minutes. I will expect the enrollment forms for my daughter by tomorrow morning. I am calling the police, Meredith shrieked, entirely unhinged now. You assaulted me. You attacked me in front of my students, the parents murmured, some starting to step backward, uncomfortable with the rapidly escalating tension. Meredith was relying on her status, her position of power in this affluent space, to completely rewrite what had just happened. She assumed that when the authorities arrived, they would look at her, the well-dressed businesswoman, and look at him, the rough black man in work clothes, and make their judgment accordingly. Andre knew this too. He knew the world, knew exactly how optics worked in neighborhoods like this. He sighed internally, tightening his grip on his daughter's hand, preparing to navigate the next phase of this completely unnecessary conflict. He would remain calm. He would not escalate the situation. But before Meredith could reach for the phone on the front desk, the heavy glass doors of the academy pushed open, the midday glare spilled into the lobby, and a man walked in, his presence instantly commanding the room. He was older, with silver hair cropped close to his scalp, wearing a tailored suit that did nothing to hide the broad, muscular frame beneath it. The room fell dead silent. This was Thomas Vance, the man who owned Elite Apex, a legendary figure in the martial arts community, someone who rarely visited this specific branch in person. Meredith immediately changed her tune, hobbling forward to play the helpless victim. "Mr. Vance," she cried out, "thank God you are here. This man came in off the street, refused to pay, and then assaulted me on the mat. I want him arrested immediately." The owner did not look at Meredith. He did not look at her injured leg or her tear-stained face. His eyes were locked dead onto the man standing quietly by the shoe rack. He walked straight past the complaining instructor, his expensive leather shoes clicking sharply on the hardwood floor, until he stopped just 3 feet in front of Andre Dupre. And then, to the absolute shock of everyone in the building, the wealthy owner of the gym snapped to perfect military attention. The silence in Elite Apex martial arts was absolute. The wealthy parents, the teenagers with their phones, and Meredith Pierce all watched in stunned disbelief as Thomas Vance, a man worth millions and highly respected across Southern California, stood rigidly in front of the quiet, single father. Vance raised his right hand in a sharp, flawless salute. "Chief," Vance said, his voice carrying the distinct cadence of military protocol. "It is an honor to have you in my facility. I had no idea you were back in San Diego." Andre sighed softly, a faint, tired smile touching the corners of his mouth. He returned the salute with relaxed precision. "Stand down, Commander," Andre replied softly. "I am just on leave, trying to be a civilian today." Vance dropped his hand, his stern face breaking into a wide, genuine smile. He stepped forward and grasped Andre's hand, pulling him into a brief, solid embrace. The crowd watched the exchange, completely paralyzed. Meredith stood frozen on the mat, the throbbing pain in her foot suddenly forgotten, replaced by a cold, sinking dread in her stomach. Meredith hobbled forward, her voice shaking, stripping away her previous bravado. "Mr. Vance? You know this guy? He is just a construction worker." Vance turned slowly to face his head instructor. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by the freezing glare of a former commanding officer. "Just a construction worker," Vance repeated, his voice dangerously low. "Ms. Pierce, the man you just tried to humiliate is Chief Petty Officer Andre Dupre. He is a Tier 1 operator with the United States Navy SEALs. He has completed 6 combat deployments, earned 2 Silver Stars, and saved more lives than you have ever met. I served as his commanding officer in Coronado before I retired to open this franchise." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd of parents. The man they had laughed at, the man in the dusty boots and cheap t-shirt, was an elite special forces operator. The teenagers slowly lowered their phones, looking at Andre with sudden, massive reverence. Vance stepped onto the mat, his polished shoes squeaking slightly against the foam. He looked at the spot where Meredith had fallen, then looked back at her. "I walked in a few minutes ago," Vance said, his voice ringing through the silent gym. "I stood in the hallway and watched the entire exchange. I watched you insult a prospective student. I watched you challenge a man who had no interest in fighting you. And I watched you throw a joint-breaking kick in a friendly sparring match when your ego could not handle the fact that he was outmaneuvering you," Meredith stammered, taking a step back. "He was disrespecting me. He came into my gym and acted like he owned the place. I was protecting the integrity of the academy." He stood quietly and asked for a piece of paper. Vance corrected harshly. "You decided to make a spectacle of him because he did not look like the wealthy clients you prefer to cater to. You saw a hard-working black father and made an arrogant assumption. You thought he was easy money. You thought he was weak." Vance shook his head, a look of profound disgust on his face. "Chief Dupree is a master of close-quarters combat. If he wanted to, he could have dismantled you in 3 seconds. He let you exhaust yourself. He refused to strike a civilian, and he protected himself using standard deflections. You are lucky he has more discipline in his little finger than you have in your entire body. If he had actually fought back, we would be waiting for an ambulance right now." Andre stood by the desk, a silent observer to the reckoning. He did not puff out his chest. He did not gloat. He simply kept his hand on Aaliyah's shoulder, shielding her from the harshest edges of the conflict. He had seen enough men broken by pride in his life. He took no pleasure in watching someone else fall apart, even someone who had wronged him. Meredith looked around the room, desperate for a lifeline. She looked at the wealthy parents who had been cheering for her just minutes ago. They all averted their eyes. No one wanted to side with a bully who had just been exposed as a coward. The illusion of her dominance was completely shattered. "Mr. Vance, please," Meredith pleaded, tears of genuine panic welling in her eyes now. "I built this youth program. I brought in all these paying students. You cannot do this in front of them." "I am not doing anything," Vance said evenly. "You did this to yourself. The core tenets of martial arts are respect, discipline, and honor. You have demonstrated none of these today. You have embarrassed this academy, you have endangered a guest, and you have shown an ugly, prejudiced heart." Vance pointed to the door. "You are fired, Miss Pierce. Effective immediately. Pack your gear and leave the premises. I will have the accounting department mail you your final check." "But my students," Meredith cried out. "They deserve a teacher who understands what a black belt actually represents," Vance said firmly. "Now get off my mat." The silence that followed was heavy and final. Meredith looked at Vance, then at the disgusted faces of the parents, and finally at Andre. She expected him to be smiling, to be enjoying his victory. But Andre was just looking at his daughter, making sure she was all right. That indifference, that complete lack of interest in her downfall, was the final blow to Meredith's massive ego. She turned, grabbed her gym bag from the corner, and limped out the back door without another word. Vance let out a long breath, adjusting his suit jacket. He turned to the crowd of parents. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the display you just witnessed. Elite Apex stands for character development, not ego. Classes are cancelled for the rest of the day. We will resume tomorrow with a new instructor. Thank you for your patience." Slowly, the parents began to file out. Several of them stopped as they passed Andre. A man in an expensive polo shirt awkwardly offered his hand, murmuring a quiet apology for laughing earlier. A woman in yoga pants smiled at Aliyah and told her she had a very brave dad. Andre accepted the apologies with a polite nod, holding no grudges. He understood human nature. Once the gym had cleared out, Vance walked over to Andre, a look of deep embarrassment on his face. "Andre, I do not even know what to say. I am so sorry. If I had known she was running the floor like that, I would have removed her months ago." "It is all right, Commander," Andre said softly. "It happens. People get wrapped up in their own hype." Vance looked down at Aliyah, crouching slightly so he was at eye level with the little girl. "And who is this fierce young lady?" "This is Aliyah," Andre said, a note of immense pride entering his voice for the first time that day. "She wants to learn how to throw a kick." "Well, Aliyah," Vance smiled warmly, "your dad is one of the toughest, smartest men I have ever had the privilege of serving with. But if he is too busy being a dad to teach you, I would be absolutely honored to be your instructor." Aliyah looked up at Andre, her eyes wide and hopeful. "Can I, Daddy?" Andre looked at the expansive mat, the clean facilities, and the man he trusted with his life standing in front of him. He nodded. "Yeah, baby girl. I think this is a good spot." Vance stood up, walking behind the front desk. He pulled out a fresh enrollment file and a premium GI uniform. "Consider the first year on the house," Vance said, sliding the items across the counter. "Not because of that ridiculous bet, but because it is the least I can do for a brother-in-arms. And frankly, I want someone with your character around this gym to set a better example for these kids." Andre took the uniform, handing it to Aliyah, who hugged the crisp white fabric tightly to her chest. "Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate it." As they walked out of the gym and back into the warm La Jolla sunshine, the heavy atmosphere of the afternoon lifted. The ocean breeze swept off the Pacific, cooling the pavement. Aliyah skipped happily beside him, swinging the bag holding her new uniform. "Daddy?" she asked, looking up at him. "Yeah, sweetie. Why did you not just tell that mean lady who you were? You could have made her stop right at the beginning." Andre stopped, kneeling down on the sidewalk to look his daughter in the eye. He took her small hands in his large, calloused ones. "Because, Aliyah, respect is not something you demand by shouting about who you are or what you have done. It is something you earn by how you behave, especially when people are treating you poorly. If I had yelled at her, or bragged or hurt her, I would be no better than she was. True strength is knowing what you are capable of, and choosing peace anyway. Do you understand?" Aliyah nodded solemnly, absorbing the lesson. "You were like a ninja, Daddy. You just let her fall over." Andre let out a deep, rumbling laugh, the sound rich and full of joy. "Something like that, baby girl. Come on, let's go get some ice cream to celebrate your new adventure." They walked down the street together, a quiet man in dusty boots and his happy daughter. To the rest of the world walking by, they looked completely ordinary. And to Andre Dupré, after a lifetime of war, that was exactly how he wanted it. The battles were behind him, the shadows had retreated, and he had secured the only victory that truly mattered, a safe, beautiful life for his child. Did you enjoy this story about humility triumphing over arrogance? If you want to hear more true-to-life dramatic stories about ordinary heroes and quiet strength, please like this video, share it with your friends, and drop a comment below, telling us your favorite part. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming content.